Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are at the time you watch this video. I hope it's good. Anyway, I just wanted to get on here and talk about something pretty serious, and that is anxiety, and specifically scan anxiety, um, or or radiation anxiety, anything to do with medical stuff, medical anxiety. I guess it could be called that. Really, it's just all anxiety. However, I wanted to just share my experience of the scan anxiety that I've had, and I used to be a very anxious person, and some of that has been coming back a little bit just because of all the things that I've gone through in the past 2 years. And I do want to say I have really good news, and you might have seen my health update. My last scan was completely clear, and everybody knows though that like with a terminal illness is a very rocky road, because it's an up and down. It's just been a roller coaster ride for me, and like I'll be up and positive, great, and then I get some bad news and I go down, and that's what causes my anxiety, is because the other shoe has dropped. Like I'm not waiting for it to drop. The other shoe has dropped several times, and so it's hard to not go back into that again because it's already dropped a couple times. So I was diagnosed not last November. I was diagnosed in November of 2022 with metastatic breast cancer, and then 6 months later was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And then in January of 2024, they told me that the cancer had metastasized to my brain. So, I mean, anyone that goes through this stuff, I mean, no wonder you have anxiety. That's what I would say. It's hard to just get rid of it, right? And I want to give you some tools, first of all, to help you with scan anxiety or medical anxiety or any anxiety at all. Even if you're afraid to drive somewhere, which used to be me. I used to be petrified I was going to get a car accident and die. And really, I want to come back to the scan. Like every time I go through, I just recently had a PET scan, and the good news is that I'm clear. And I'm having a CT scan next week of my brain just to make sure that it's clear. All my labs are pointing to all positive news, and again, having it all clear. This is like, I've had several of them. I have them every 3 months, and they've all been clear for the past almost 2 years, minus the brain mets, right? So anyway, I also had anxiety. I would say I had anxiety going into radiation, and part of it is I noticed that my anxiety is when I don't know what's going to happen, right? And it can be really difficult sometimes because life, we don't know what's going to happen. And there's this bit of like, well, if I have to have some sort of control over it, right? I have to have some sort of control over my life. Well, I'm going to tell you, we don't actually. And I think it's an illusion that we think we have some. Because, I had a full thriving business, counseling business, and I was doing great in life. At least I thought I was. I mean, the only thing missing was my spiritual health. My spiritual health was in jeopardy. And I talk about that in some of the videos. But I just thought I was rocking it, right? And I have, so much to look forward to, and all that. And the bombshell dropped. And I was in a complete place of not knowing. And not knowing causes me or caused me a lot of anxiety in the past, right? And so here I am, I'm faced with all this stuff, and I'm back in the not knowing. I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know when I'm going to die. So that's another thing I would say. If you're, you're facing, you're in a disease, and they tell you, well, you're terminal and there's no cure. I mean, who wouldn't have anxiety over that? And I want to say that the only person that knows your timeline is God. And the only thing you can do is get up in the morning and praise God that you have another day to live. And that's for anybody. That's for anybody, whether you have cancer or not, because you could turn a corner and be gone. It's true. We're only a vapor in the mist, right? Anyway, I want to talk about some mental things you can do, some tangible things you can do. But the first thing I want to do is talk about what your mind is doing. So one of the distortions that happens is catastrophizing. And my son and I had this discussion about some of these things, and he goes, well, no, that's just actually that's just preparing you so that you could prepare. And I'm like, well, you're when you're doing that, when you're thinking like the worst case scenario, because that's what catastrophizing is, you're creating the anxiety. So he's like, no, I'm being realistic. And I'm like, that's actually a distorted type of thought, right? And so so we went back and forth in this debate, and it's a cognitive distortion, like, I'm going to die. Well, you don't know that, right? Do you know that for sure? Like, the doctor's giving you a diagnosis, and I automatically, we automatically go into this, I'm going to die thing. Well, we're all going to die, right? So we're going right into catastrophe, and like, this is horrible, and it's thinking the worst possible outcome. So, I mean, we're all going to die, and we just don't know when. And it's always good to have your affairs in order no matter what, even if you're 19, right? Or 19 or 20, right? No, 18 actually. It's always good to have your affairs in order anyway, because, when I was diagnosed, they were like, well, get your affairs in order. So they thought I was going to die sooner than later. And so that was one thing that sent me into the spiral. Oh, get your affairs in order means you don't have that much time left. Not necessarily true, because I'll be 2 years in November. So, you just have to get up and be grateful for every day that you're alive. I mean, and you do have things that you can set up to look forward to. Like I think that actually helps is by going, I have my son's graduation I was able to go to. I've been able to visit family. I'm traveling more. We took a trip to Universal Studios. Like, there's all kinds of things that you can look forward to. Instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Like, and it's difficult when you're faced with all that you're faced with, right? And I took some notes, and I wanted to read something to you. I wanted to give you a couple of tips, right? And one of them is, don't ever, when you're feeling anxious, like if you're getting ready to go get a scan and you're feeling anxious, I don't feel anxiety when I go get my scan. I feel anxiety after my scan. So whether it's before or after, it's like, just remember where you are. So I always ask, where am I? I'm right here. I'm not dead. So when you go into anxiety, that anxiety of dying, I'm going to die, oh my God, it's going to come back negative, or it's going to come back positive for cancer, I'm dead meat, I don't have long to live, whatever it is, that's what I go through, is reminding yourself to remember where you are. And where are you? You are here. You are now. You are in the now. You are not in what's going to happen next. You are right here. So get grounded in, I'm right here. I'm right here. So breathing, and I'm right here. I'm right here. And then ask yourself what time it is. What time is it? The time is now. I'm right here, right now. So I'm not in a casket somewhere. I'm right here, I'm right now. That's it. That's it. And those questions can ground you back into your body and back into the moment, because that's where you are, is in the moment. You're not dead. And so I use this trick all the time. Well, trick. It's not really a trick. It's telling your mind the truth, right? Tell your mind the truth. It will help so much. One of the scriptures I wrote down was worry. Like, a lot of times I go into worry and worrying about what's going to happen and what's going to happen to my kids and what's going to happen after I'm gone. I go into that a lot. I go into just worry it's a lot of stress on my mind. A lot of anxiety comes up whenever I go to a scan. Like, I go through all these things, like I'm planning my funeral and like doing all that, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not where I'm at. I'm not way ahead of myself. I'm not in the future yet. Doesn't mean that you're not able to plan things. Just like you plan a will, like it's you can plan trips and stuff like that, things to look forward to. I highly encourage. It makes a big difference. One of the scriptures that I wrote down was, worry can crowd God out of our lives. Matthew 13:22. Well, yeah, because if you're constantly worried, you're not listening to him. You're not listening to what he has to say, right? This one helped me a lot too, is because I've been afraid of bad news. Like, when is the next shoe gonna drop? Because 3 have already dropped, right? So when's the next one gonna drop? And this one says, they do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. Psalm 112:7. Helps me so much. Helps me so much to go, wait a minute. I'm trusting nothing. I'm trusting no one. So I need to be in my power, in my confidence, and trusting that God's got this. Like, no matter what happens, he's got it. If his will for me is for me to go next week, then that's what it is, right? Like, if I'm going home next week, okay. I got to be in confidence on that. Like, I'm so grateful every morning I wake up. I'm not ready to go anywhere. However, if it's God's will, then we're going to go home. There's nothing wrong with being at home. It's probably going to be, well, I believe it's going to be the most fantastic place ever. Most fantastic place ever. So why wouldn't I want to go home? Why wouldn't I want to go home? So part of it is being stuck. I'm stuck in the world, right? I'm stuck in this world. However, I have so much love. There's so much love here, and one of the things I go into with my mind is, and it makes me sad and anxious, is being away from my children, right? Or going into what they would experience. I go into what I think they might experience. I don't even know, and that's creating a lot of sadness and anxiety. I don't even know what their experience is going to be when I die. And the odds of me going first are pretty high because I'm older than they are. So, however, I still don't know my timeline, and I still don't know their timeline either. And I would go into some of that with them as well. Like, I would go, what if something happened to one of my kids? What if? So, what if is also a cognitive distortion, and you can what if yourself to death. What if this happens? What if that happens? And again, my son goes, well, you're being realistic and looking at both sides. And I'm like, well, it's totally a distorted way of thinking. It's not truth. You're not in the truth of what if thinking. You're thinking the worst. So again, don't underestimate breathing. I know, like, counselors always like, take a breath, but it's really actually true. And I would just say, for me, the breathing helps me to get out of ruminating. So ruminating, I kind of associate that with like marinating something. So you're marinating like a steak or vegetables or whatever it is, doesn't have to be meat, whatever you're marinating. So you're doing that in your brain. You're just ruminating, you're just marinating that toxic, negative thing in your brain, or thought in your brain. So it's saturating in your mind. And then it's harder to come out of, right? However, again, don't underestimate breathing. I know all counselors are like, oh, just take a deep breath. It'll go away. That's not all necessarily true. However, don't underestimate, because if you concentrate on breathing, you're not concentrating on that negative thought. So taking a deep breath in, hold it at the top for 3 seconds, just let it out. It helps tremendously. If you don't remember the 2 questions, where am I? What time is it? Breathe. You can breathe. You can breathe yourself out of a panic attack. I've done it numerous times, going into panic, right? So you just got to take some breath, and then again, ask those questions. When you're seeing that your mind is jumping into the worst conclusion, go back to the questions. Where am I? What time is it? I'm right here. I'm right now. I'm not dead yet. I did a video called I'm Not Dead Yet. So anyway, those are some things to think about when you're in that distortion of what if and catastrophizing. Those are 2 of the ones that I covered. There's many more. I wrote them all down. I was going to actually do a series on some of these distortions that we have. And, whatever you're facing, whether you're afraid to get in your car because you're so petrified that you're going to get in an accident, this works. If you have anxiety right before a scan, this works. If you have this after a scan, this works. No matter where you are. And a lot of times people will have, most of their anxiety will come up at night, right? Because we have time to stop. We're not actually distracting ourselves from it. We have time to stop. And so you can do the breathing exercise, ask the questions. There's a couple times I just asked him over and over and over. It's like, who am I? Where am I? What am I? Like, you're asking for the truth, right? And the truth is you're in the now, and you're in this moment. You're not 2 weeks from now, you're not a year from now, you're not yesterday. So, not that you can think about yesterday. However, sometimes we go into the past and start becoming depressed because, well, we didn't do this right, or we didn't do that. What if I would have done this differently, or whatever. Same thing. You can cause yourself depression and anxiety when you're in that loop. So part of that key is asking those 2 questions and taking deep breaths. Breathing, do not underestimate breathing. I'm telling you, it helps a lot. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I think this is good for now. And thank you so much for your, just watching, looking at my crazy hair. It's growing back finally. I'm excited about it. Again, for probably the second time. So it was probably this length. No, might have been a bit longer before I had to do radiation. And radiation took all my hair again. So that was not a fun time for me. And I didn't enjoy it, I'll be honest. However, again, it's back. Today it's back, So I'm just going to celebrate that. Anyway, thank you so much for being here and listening to me rant. I hope that something in this will help you and help you to get grounded in who you are, and you are not your anxiety. So you could even, actually I would even throw this in, that you could, instead of saying I have anxiety, it's anxious. It's anxious. That's it. It's anxious. The brain is anxious. It doesn't mean you don't have to own that. You don't have to keep it to yourself. It's anxious. It's depressed. It's anxious. That's it. It is not you. You are not depression, and you are not anxiety. All right. Now I'm not going to stop talking. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed and the channel, I would encourage you to do so if you want to stick around. All right. Thank you. Talk to you soon.